All right, today we're jumping headfirst into the book of Second Kings. And let me tell you, this is not some dry history lesson. This is a wild ride, a story packed with drama, violence, and miracles. It's all about two nations, Israel and Judah, and their collision course with destiny, full of powerful prophets and seriously flawed kings. And really, this whole epic saga boils down to one simple question. What happens when the power of God speaking through a prophet goes toe-to-toe with the power of a king on his throne? We're not just talking politics here. This is a full-blown spiritual war for the very soul of a nation. And you can't talk about this conflict without talking about the guy, Elijah the Tishbite. And these words you see here, that's not just some empty threat. That's a death sentence. And he's delivering it to soldiers sent by King Ahaziah of Israel. So here's the setup. King Ahaziah takes a nasty fall and gets hurt. But instead of, asking the God of Israel for help, he sends his guys to consult Beelzebub, a Philistine god. For Elijah, this is the ultimate slap in the face to God, and he is not having it. So when the king sends troops to arrest him, Elijah doesn't even flinch. He just stands his ground. And this number, 102, that's the body count. The king sends a captain and 50 men, and poof, Elijah calls down fire from heaven and incinerates them. The king doesn't learn, sends another 51 men, and it happens again. A brutal, terrifying lesson in where the real power is. But even a fiery force of nature like Elijah can't be around forever. The story pivots here to a really crucial moment. It's time for him to pass the torch, or in this case, his mantle, to his hand-picked successor, a guy named Elisha. Now, this wasn't some quiet retirement party. Oh no. This was a test. On his very last journey, Elijah keeps telling Elisha, hey, just stay here, you don't need to follow me. But at every single stop, Elisha absolutely refuses. He's loyal to the end, saying, I swear I will not leave you. So it all comes down to this moment at the Jordan River. Elijah makes this incredibly bold ask. He wants a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Now, he's not asking to be twice as powerful. He's asking to be recognized as the legitimate heir, the firstborn spiritual son. And Elijah's like, okay, tough request. But if you see me when I'm taken, you got it. And then it happens. Out of nowhere, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appear, and Elisha is just swept up into heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha sees the whole thing. The test is passed. The power is his. So Elisha is now the man in charge, and he starts his own ministry. And if Elijah was all about fire and judgment, Elisha's career is marked by something different. Just an incredible string of miracles that give life and restore what was broken. I mean, just look at this list. He's not just a prophet for big, dramatic showdowns. He's right there in people's daily lives. He makes a city's water drinkable, saves a family from being sold into slavery, and even heals Naaman, who, by the way, is the general of an enemy army. It just goes to show this power knows no borders. But, and this is a big but, don't think for a second that Elisha is all warm and fuzzy. There is a terrifying side to him. On his way to Bethel, a bunch of kids start mocking him, calling him baldhead. Elisha turns around and curses them, and then 2 bears come out of the woods and maul 42 of them. It's a shocking, brutal reminder you do not mess with God's prophet. And this kind of terrifying power wasn't just for personal insults. Oh no. The prophets were deep in the political game. They were kingmakers and king breakers, shaping the fate of the entire nation on God's command. They were the ultimate disruptors. So let's talk about the house of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. Think of them as the ultimate villains of the story. They've corrupted Israel for decades. So Elisha sends a prophet to an army commander named Jehu with a chilling message. You're the new king, and your first job is to wipe out Ahab's entire family. And Jehu does not waste a single second. Look at this timeline. This isn't just a coup. It is a lightning-fast, brutal purge. He kills the king of Israel. He kills the visiting king of Judah. He has Jezebel tossed out a window, and dogs eat her corpse, just as prophesied. And then he has all 70 of Ahab's sons executed, and their heads are literally delivered to him in baskets. Total annihilation. You'd think that would solve the problem, right? Nope. The cycle of disobedience just keeps going, generation after generation. So now we're going to jump forward in time to the southern kingdom of Judah, where one good king tries to make one last, desperate stand.
So, workers are renovating the temple, and the high priest finds something incredible: a long lost book of the law. When this book is read to the young king Josiah, he literally rips his clothes apart in horror. He realizes his people have been breaking God's laws for centuries, and all the punishments promised in the book are about to come down on their heads.
And Josiah's reaction is swift and absolute. He launches the biggest religious house cleaning the nation has ever seen. He goes on this absolute tear, tearing down every pagan altar, getting rid of false priests, burning idols. He destroys the entire system of false worship and brings back the Passover, which had been ignored for who knows how long. And this is the absolute tragedy of the whole story. As righteous and as thorough as Josiah was, it wasn't enough. The sins of his grandfather, the unbelievably evil King Manasseh, had sealed Judah's fate. God's judgment was already locked in. The reforms were good, but they were just too little, too late. After Josiah dies in battle, it's all downhill. The kingdom of Judah goes into a final death spiral. A string of weak, terrible kings come along, they undo all of Josiah's good work, and they steer the nation right into the path of destruction that had been coming for centuries. And then the bill comes due. The instrument of God's judgment arrives at the gates of Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar, king of the rising empire of Babylon. He's here to collect.
Jerusalem is put under siege. The city is completely cut off, strangled. The siege goes on until there's no food left. People are starving. The city is desperate, and its great walls finally begin to fall.
And the end is total. The Babylonians pour through the walls, and they burn it all to the ground. The great temple, the king's palace, everything. The holy city is just a pile of ash, and the survivors are rounded up and marched off into exile. The story of the kingdom is over. So we're left with this. The whole book is filled with these incredible displays of divine power. Fire from heaven, miracles, prophecy fulfilled. It feels absolute. And yet the story is always driven forward by human choices, right? A king choosing to worship an idol, a prophet choosing to obey, a nation choosing again and again not to change. Which leaves us with this huge question to chew on. If God's power is absolute, why does it seem like it's our choices, our struggles that write the pages of history?